I have no accolades.
What you mean? See, okay,
I
so that's what I wanted to talk about because you feel like that, right? You feel like there's this. Look, I don't know. I didn't do the intro, but this may be the start. Who knows, right?
yeah,
So you
yeah,
say you like a known person with no accolades. I don't even know how to say that word.
yeah.
But so when I was over there, I stayed over there for 2 weeks when I was doing like my orientation. I felt like you were the glue of the house, and I was no, I'm
Stop.
serious.
I'm already gonna be
Hey,
emotional.
it is what it is.
That's a huge compliment.
It is because you look at obviously I'm looking at it from the outside looking in. Mind you, like I'm staying there with y'all for 2 weeks, so I get to see a lot more. So I get up. Every time I get up, I feel like you were up before me. So you're working out, like doing what you got to do for yourself, and then you get off. You rush. I feel like you're rushing to do everything because you have like the same 24 hours everyone has, but like the way you maximize your 24 hours, it's
Wow,
impressive.
you're killing me now. Thank you. That is honestly, like, as a mom, that is one of the like biggest compliments, like, truly, because look, I'm like super emotional about that because I don't know, like, I don't ever think of myself in that way. So it's really cool to hear, and I appreciate
So that's
that.
kind of what I was telling you. Like, there's questions that I have in mind, and that's one of them. It's like, how do you manage doing all that? Because obviously you're married to a district fire chief, right? And
Right,
we know how busy he is. Anyone who's a firefighter, you can assume that they're busy, especially someone that's in an administrative position where they're gone pretty much every
right,
day. But you're busy as well. How do you
right.
manage that?
Honestly, I don't feel like there's like a certain uh way to manage it. I feel like you just literally have to take it day by day, and I mean that's truly all you can do. No one's like come to me and been like, "Hey, this is what you're supposed to do and this is how you're supposed to handle these things." I feel like we've truly um learned how to navigate this life together.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like one of the biggest things that's been um really helpful for us in our marriage is that we've never lost sight of like the value of each other and what each other brings to our marriage. I've always said this, and I actually we had a 30th birthday party for Emilio, and I don't really I feel like when I speak, I try to speak like I always want to be authentic. Like that's super important to me, right? Like that's the kind of people I love to be around. So um, it's super important to me to make sure I'm like people see that side of me because that's all that I ever care about. Like just people know that when they talk to me, it's real. Like you're not gonna get any BS.
That's true.
But
That is true.
yeah, it's huge. You know, it's huge. But one of the biggest things that's always been like major for me is that regardless of every level that Emilio has been able to achieve, he's always made me feel like those achievements were just mine as well. Like he became a lieutenant, I became a lieutenant.
Mhm.
He became a captain, like you're a captain. Like I became, a chief, you're a chief. And I've always felt like he's always appreciated my role in helping him get to that level. And I feel like him always making me feel appreciated in that way, it's like I don't have an issue ever trying to do my part in our marriage or relationship to make it work. You just truly do what you can do to support each other. And, and I don't ever want to come across like, man, she has it all together because I
Mhm.
don't. We don't. Um, it's hard. Days are hard, days are long, but and I mean, I worked from home on Friday and he came home and I had already picked up the kids and we were like waiting for him so we could go to the store and we all wanted to go together. But he gets home and he comes and sits in the office and he opens his computer and I'm like, okay, like I thought we were waiting for you so we could leave. And he's like, yeah, just give me a second. So he gets and he starts like shooting off emails and his phone rang probably three different times from three different people. And was I frustrated? 100%. Do those things still happen? 100%. But I don't know. I mean, I don't really feel like there's things that push my buttons to the extent of like being so angry because he's busy. It's just it comes with the territory and truly that's been a learning experience this entire
I feel
time.
like you have to be
Um,
very understanding because we were having a conversation the other day, and I asked the question: Is there a balance to greatness? Meaning that I feel like me and him were like-minded. We're real goal-driven. So there's always things that we want to accomplish, and I find myself a lot when I work a shift. I come home, I have homework. I'm taking 6, 7 classes. feel like I have to study for this, study for that, and we overload. And you start to ask yourself, it's like with relationships, and for someone who's trying to do that, it gets to the point where you're having to push like it almost feels like you have to put family on the back burner, kids,
Yeah.
just to do that. So one thing I struggle with is like having a balance, balancing it all out. So how long have y'all been married for?
We got married 12, 11, 10. So I think this year will be 13 years in December. Um, but we have not always, I can 100% tell you, I have not always been on the front burner. I have totally experienced what it's been like to be on the back burner when it comes to his career. And to be super transparent, I feel like within the past like 5 years since we've moved away from our hometown, I feel like he's truly seen how he always put his career probably over us 100%. And he's said that to me, like, I get it now. Like now that we don't have family around us, like I see where I lack, and I've seen that I feel like I want us like we've created this more work-life balance literally just within the last 5 years. He's gotten to where he's gotten collectively, like, with me, because he always makes me feel like that. But it has not always been like this way. We've not always had this balance. It's truly not, it's not always been like that. It's literally been learned within the past five
And that's what I was
years.
gonna say. Being in the fire service, I feel having you get to a certain point where you can start noticing like the maturity. I know when I first started
Yeah.
out, the lack of maturity was just
Yeah.
incredible. So
Right.
my question for you is, obviously people are coming in the fire service every day. New people are starting left and right. What advice would you give to someone wanting to date someone that's like a first responder that lives that lifestyle? That's just in their early 20s or whatever it may be. If it's someone they just met like on
Yeah.
Tinder or what
Yeah.
advice would you give?
Um,
What advice would you give them?
and so we got married when I was 23 and he was 24. It's I was super young,
Mhm.
to be honest, but my advice would be to 100% they need to grasp the concept of being married to somebody in this industry. I don't even know if industry is the right term. Um, is that it's not for the weak. Um, it's hard. Like you're dealing with a partner who literally sees things that people should never see. And that right there alone can take a toll on them, which in turn will take a toll on both of you. And that is also something that I didn't easily compute myself. Um, that was a learning process. Like he'd come home, from a shift early in our marriage, and it's like, man, I didn't sleep all night, I had, whatever call, and sometimes he'd go into detail,
Right.
and sometimes he wouldn't. But I remember I won't speak specifically of it because I just won't. But he kind of went into detail, and I kind of sat there like in shock, like, wow, he saw all those things, and he's literally come home to me the next day like nothing, and I wanted to like get up, and like let's go start our day, let's go eat breakfast, let's go
Mm-hmm.
shop. Like that's a lot. That's a lot, and unless you're willing to come to an understanding that you have a partner that's dealing with some of the craziest things they'll ever see in life and be open to learning from those things and learning how to be there for them. It's if you're not willing to do that and understand that, it's not for you.
That's rough too. You work, you go to work. I'm gonna say this. Everyone's job, I feel like, is stressful in some type of way. I
Right.
don't ever try to
Right.
single out being a first responder like, oh, my job's more stressful than you, because stress hits people in different ways. But it's hard
100%.
working a 24-hour or 48-hour shift, and then coming home as if nothing happened. I know there are certain times where
Right.
like we would see certain things, and I have to go see my kids the next day. I remember there was one time I drove home because I was making that 2-hour drive home, and I stayed in
Yeah.
the parking lot for an hour. So I wasn't prepared to see my kids and deal with them after seeing what I saw. So sometimes
Right.
like that stuff, it gets pretty rough. So do y'all talk about that normally, or
So obviously now he's in a totally different position. But I feel like we probably talked about it more and more detail oriented than I was probably prepared for. especially super early in our marriage. Like and honestly, a lot of that was me. I can remember now, like I literally would pry, like, what else happened? How old were they? What does that look like? Oh my, and I remember one call specifically that he had. I asked so many questions that it gave me like nightmares.
Mm.
And truly, because I'm a civilian, like that stuff, like I don't experience those things. And I remember telling him, I'm like, I'm gonna have to stop asking you questions like that. I'm here for you, but I cannot like ask. Don't let me pry, but know that I'm here. Or if you feel like you need to go and hang out with one of your friends to talk about these things, like tell me, because I don't think I'm the kind of person that can literally sit there and, or maybe I couldn't back then. I think I can now. I've totally, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding now, but yeah, we talked about it a lot, probably too much, honestly.
Do you feel like his career as in the fire service kind of spills over into your work life balance to where it affects you maybe at work or at home?
So, I feel like for a long time it did. I mean, I probably feel like it still does at times. I don't probably feel it necessarily each day anymore. I think for a long time I felt it each day, even when he was still on shift, because a lot of firemen have many jobs. So you could work at the fire department and you could work at a transfer service, like when you get off. And so I feel like it's weird to say this, but when you marry somebody that works in this life, um, it kind of easily becomes your life too. Because when I met y'all, when I met the people who he was working with when we first got married, like I like love them. I love you. I love your kids. Like you just, yeah, it spills 100% into your life.
Especially
Like
bringing
it
bringing the kids
just,
to the station, the family. Just I think
right,
that's probably like the
right.
best thing.
Yeah, oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's the best part about it.
Um, do you feel like was he like a firefighter when y'all got married, or did y'all get married before?
No, when I met him, he was still in paramedic school, but he was a firefighter, yes.
When you first came to the fire, visited the fire station, you feel like you got to get a stamp of approval by the other guys?
100%. 100%. And I cannot go into detail because, man, if you've ever been around a firehouse, you have,
Yeah,
obviously, but like you are a fire family. Like there really are not many boundaries. And
at all. And they'll
yeah,
let you know.
no,
They'll let you know.
right. I mean, my own brother-in-law, as you know, worked still at the same
Mhm.
department that, he started at. And I don't really even think I had my own brother-in-law approval. And he wasn't my brother-in-law
Mhm.
at the time, but he would tell you, he's like, yeah, like you need to move on. Like she's not for you. So yes, a hundred
It's funny you
percent.
said that. Like when we talk, we always believe in transparency. We tell it how it is. So
Yeah.
whenever I got hired, which reminds me of another story I'll tell you in a bit. Whenever when I got hired, I was 22 years old. So I feel like to understand me at the time, you got to understand my background. I was in
Right.
Dallas, and up until that point in my life, I didn't really have anything good going on for me. Like I felt like a bum, right? So whenever I got hired, I was like, oh, I'm a firefighter now. Like, I,
I
and it's
know.
so embarrassing because I was like, man, I would just wear my stuff everywhere. Like everyone had to know I was a firefighter, right?
Yeah.
And so everyone at the fire station, I feel like they were living through me because I was single. Like
Oh
I'll be
yeah.
on,
Oh
I'll be on, and it's funny because a lot of people watching this can probably relate. Like, so I'll be just anybody I would meet or whatever. I'll show them like Facebook profile. It'll go around the whole department, or and be like, oh, what do you think about? So they're like, if you want to definitely weed somebody out, I mean, you can just ask them what they think, and like everyone, it's crazy the feeling of you know
yeah.
that's how
No,
it
it
works.
is.
That's how it works there.
Yeah. Right.
But
But it's one of the coolest things about it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So the story that I reminded myself of, I tell y'all this every time, but now since we're having an audience, I feel like I have to tell them the story. So whenever I got
Go for it.
hired, your husband, he was my first lieutenant.
Oh, great.
And I remember the first day I met him, the first thing he asked me was like, where else did you apply? It wasn't like no handshake or no nothing. And like, I don't know if I told you this, but at first I didn't like him. I didn't like him
I
at
believe
all. I
it.
didn't like his personality. I didn't like anything because when I got to the station, I was like, man, I feel like he's out to get me. But it's crazy because he's the same person now, and he acts just the same, and like we're best buds, you know.
Yeah,
But
he's hard. I didn't like him when I met him.
everyone
A
says
hundred
that. No
percent.
one liked him.
Yeah.
So, what are like some of the unique challenges that you face? You know, being married and y'all work y'all's different schedule.
So some of the unique challenges that we face, it's been like this year will be 5 years since we've moved from our hometown, and we lived, born and raised,
Tell me.
in Victoria. I, I don't know. I just wasn't gonna put it
Yeah,
all
yeah,
out
yeah.
there, but
No,
there
no,
it
that's
goes. Born and raised there, and we moved in 2018. He took a promotion. I was at that time in a position where I worked at a place for 12 years. I was a manager there, and like right before we moved, I found out that we were pregnant with our second child, and it was hard. I felt like things were pretty easy. He was always busy when we lived in Victoria because he's always worked multiple jobs. Ever since I've been with him, I don't think he's ever just had one job.
hmm
Um, so I knew that life. However, I had never experienced that life without my own family or in friends and support system. So when we moved in 2018, we learned a lot about each other, and it was rough. I was pregnant, like I said. I became a stay-at-home
hmm
mom because I wanted to finish up, my bachelor's degree, and it was hard. I didn't have any friends, and truly the only friends that I feel like I really, really made there initially were his coworkers. I went to the station. I got to know the guys and some of the girls there, and that's who I became friends with. And it was hard on our marriage too because I had never been a stay-at-home mom. I didn't know what to do with myself. And let me preface this by saying that I have now been in a position where I've worked from home.
hmm
I've worked a hybrid schedule. I worked full time in an office, and I've been a stay-at-home mom. And none of those things are easy. I think it's all hard. So um, no one, no mom, no dad has it easy. I think everything comes with challenges, but it was rough. I think that's probably the roughest part of our relationship was literally moving and having to experience those new challenges. But what are we, 2023 now? Feels like time is literally like since COVID just all like squished together. But just literally trying to navigate through those times um has been the hardest, and I feel like we're finally coming out on the other side. I now work in a position hybridly
hmm
for the city that we live in, and I feel like we're finally establishing some normalcy. But you have then the challenges of how hard and how demanding his job is time wise, and literally me just trying to navigate working and both of us trying to be there for our kids in the best way possible because obviously that's the most important thing. But it's
That's one
hard.
thing I did. That's one thing
Period.
I will say I took out of y'all's playbook, the way y'all balance dealing with the kids. Obviously, you have two beautiful kids. And when I was
Thank you
down
so
there
much.
doing my orientation, I would see how y'all would take them to like their sporting practices and doing all this. You went on a field trip and all this and that. I know
Oh,
one of the problems that I had, and I'm still working on this when I come home, I feel like I just need my space. It's I don't know how to say it any other way, but it's not that I don't want to be involved, but I feel like I need
right.
to put my rest or whatever I have to do first. I find myself doing that a lot of times. So I see I see the way y'all do it, and it kind of opened my eyes. I was like, man, I need to find a better way to do that.
Gary, I feel like first of all, I appreciate those kind words, but it I think we all need that
hmm
space. Like I'm not even gonna sit here and lie to you and be like, oh yeah, I love to come home and everybody needs a million things from me. It's not easy. I've had to learn to do certain things that work for us. And maybe my time when I get home isn't until after the kids go to sleep, but I will literally stay up late, which is not a great thing because I want to just hang out on the couch by myself or with my husband because I need that. Like, would I love to come home right after work and just be like, I need space, like, don't ask for anything from me? It's just not reality. And um, I think it's just something we've learned over time. Like, you're gonna get that, but right now, like we'll have time like that in our life, but right now, like these kids need us more than ever, you know? But to literally sit here and say, "Oh, it's so easy," it's not. It's
Yeah,
not.
no,
It's hard.
I feel you. Do you, do you feel like there's a struggle for you to like to keep your own identity as well? Or what are some of the things that you do? Because obviously, like anyone in a relationship or marriage is a joint, almost like a joint venture,
Right.
like it's a business. But at the
Right.
same time, I feel like each of us need to keep our own identity. So,
Yeah, I feel like just referring back to us moving too, I probably, when I became a stay-at-home mom, I had no friends. I probably have lost myself from like after I had our son, late 2018 through, I didn't start working outside of our home. I think it was at the beginning of 2022. I went back to an office, but 100% I lost myself. And that was hard. And it was hard because I feel like, what am I complaining about? Like, why are things so hard for me? Like I literally get to be a stay-at-home mom. I get to be here for my kids as much as I want. I have a beautiful house. I have a car that works. Like, why is my life so hard? Like, why am I acting like this is so hard? But it's hard. Like mentally, it's hard to not have friends, to not have um things to go to like just literally put on like the same workout clothes every like not the same ones, but the same like
mhm.
outfit every day because I don't have anything to dress up for, and nobody really cared if I put on makeup or not. But 100%, like I had to, for me personally, I feel like um, I started going to a MOPS group, which is Moms of Preschoolers in my neighborhood, and that was we've moved. Obviously,
Mhm.
we moved from the city we initially moved to when my husband took his first promotion there, but I joined a workout group, which is completely out of my comfort zone because I am, believe it or not, I can be pretty shy,
Mhm.
but that was really beneficial for me. And when we moved here in 2020, um, I had to join a group. I was struggling. And I noticed it more like when we would go around family, like my mouth, you couldn't shut me up because I was like so much in need for conversation. So just literally when I started working back out of the house in 2022, I feel like I found myself again.
So
And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, you're fine.
So, what
Go.
advice would you give other people that are in the same situation? They feel like they have, lost their identity. And before you answer that, we go to work. Like I keep saying, we're shift based work. We never see the same thing twice. It's always different. It's always an adventure. Some people go to work,
Yeah,
whatever hours they work each day, and it's the same thing. So what
yeah.
advice would you give someone who's in that was in that same situation and somehow along the line they have lost their identity?
First of all, I would say that the feelings that you are having are valid. Um, but I feel like in order to see change in that, you're gonna have to step out of your comfort zone. When I took the position that I took to work outside of the house, um, I don't even know if I should say this, but oddly enough, it was at a fire department,
Mhm.
and it was an entry level position, but and I was nervous, like because I'm like, this is weird, like this is not my life, like what am I doing here? However, it was one of the best things I could have ever done for myself because I was able to understand that lifestyle. It was my lifestyle too. And I literally met people who I just vibed with,
Mhm.
and it was fun. Like I got to hang out, and I was getting paid to hang out, but I had the opportunity to continue staying home. Um, and I probably made things a little bit harder by going back to work because we had to put my son in daycare, and like that's another expense, and we had to put my daughter in extended day. That's another expense. But my husband's like, you gotta go do something because you are struggling, and I've never seen you like
Mhm.
this. And stepping out and putting myself back out there, I was in a management position for a long time, but to start out back in the entry level position, it was probably one of the best things I could have ever done for myself. So have hope, but you got to step out for those things to
Yeah.
change.
Do you feel okay? So for someone that's in a healthcare profession, dating a person like that, is there anything they can do to help them get out of that? Obviously, first is recognition. I feel like a lot of times we don't.
Right.
It's like we recognize it, but we
Right.
never talk about it. We just sweep it under the
Right.
rug. But what
Yeah.
can they do to help?
I feel like I was always heard. I feel like Emilio always heard my feelings. I feel like he always made me feel validated,
You said hurt
but I
or
don't
hurt? Hurt.
heard. H E A
I
R
was like,
D.
damn. Okay.
No. I feel like he always heard me. Like he never made me feel like I feel like obviously like we're our own worst
Hmm.
critics, but he never made me feel like you shouldn't have the feelings you're having. Like your life is not hard. He never made me feel like that. If I told him like, man, I am struggling, he'd always be like, well, what can we do? Like, what can we do to fix this? Like, what do I need to help you do? I feel like he probably understood it even more when I went back to work and I started having something for myself again. And I would come home and he'd be like, man, like you're a totally different person again. Like you are the person that I was used to being around.
Right.
Like, so I knew I had changed. I guess I just didn't realize how much I had
So I feel like
changed.
now this is going to turn into a therapy session because I'm asking.
Go for it.
All right. So I feel like I have a personality to where I don't, it's a switch, but sometimes I don't know how to turn it on and off. So I'm at work and I'm always just laid back. I try to take my emotions out of work and whatever happens there, but when I come home, I'm the same way. So, with them telling me the same thing, the way I see it is like, so what are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna do to fix it? So what's
Yeah.
something that I can do to help?
Like to help you, what? To switch out of the mentality from the
Yeah,
workplace?
because
Or what
I
did you?
feel with people, I interact different with people. So, for example, if you tell me you want to accomplish something, which I mean we talk about all the time, I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
being on you about it. So, what's going on with this? Like, I'm not gonna say I don't care the steps to get there, but I like to see results. When
Right.
anyone wants
Right.
to do something, I'm always like on their behind about it. So, with the family life, I feel like it's the same thing. I'm
Yeah.
I'm not as emotional about talking to
Yeah.
certain things. So it's like I feel like I struggle with that.
Man, that's hard because Amelia is the exact same way. I am a girl. I'm emotional. Obviously, I was crying the second we started
No,
talking,
I was
but
like, God dang.
he he is not an emotional person, and he's never been. I mean, and it's and that's like another thing is like being with somebody in these positions. They are so used to like seeing death, dealing with death, learning how to separate um, those times and family time. Like I am not, and I lost my grandma, which was like the first biggest loss I've ever experienced, like in 2017, and I struggled with it, and sometimes I feel like I still do, but it's weird because during that time he apologized to me because he's like, man, I feel like I don't know if I was there for you like I should have because his feelings were always so different than mine. And one of the biggest things I think that, or one of the biggest advice pieces that I could ever give would be like, literally just try your hardest to be there in that moment because it's important. And by not being mentally there when your significant other needs you, like it's very like I can see it. Like I can see when you're checked out. And there are days when Amelia is still checked out and I'm like, hey, like I need your attention for like the next 2 hours. After that, after the kids are down, like you can go if you need to get on the computer, if you need whatever. But like we need you from like this time to this time. And he'd be like, you're right. Like I'm sorry. But I feel like I feel like I have to still tell him those things sometimes. Like, hey, we need you to focus here. And it's weird to say that because I don't want to like have to tell another adult that, but I feel like that's what works in our relationship because if he didn't snap out of it, or if I don't know, I maybe talk too much. Like I'm a communicator. Like
Hmm.
I would struggle desperately if he did not communicate with me. And I'm just like that kind of person, like, hey, like I gotta tell you, like, no, like you gotta be here with us. And he'll say, like, man, you're right, like I'm sorry. Like he acknowledges it, but I don't know if you could if I could just tell you that. I don't know if that like I'm not in your house,
Hmm.
you know. That's the only thing that I can tell you is to try to fully be present when you can because it's really important and it's easily seen when you're not there.
And I know I'm not a good communicator because whenever something's bothering me, and I just don't talk. I'd rather just not talk about anything. I just rather be
Yeah.
left in a room alone. And when someone tries to talk to me about it, I feel like that's what makes it worse. But it's so
Yeah.
hard, man. It's so hard to change because for anybody making change is so difficult, right? And like
No, change is
making
hard.
change means you got to fight urges. And I'm just like the urge to not say nothing, not snap, not. First of all, I don't
Yeah.
want to make it seem like I'm just snapping all the time because I'm not.
No, I
But
know. I
it's
know.
so hard to make any type of change because you got to fight these urges and stuff. And I'm like, I feel like I'll be making progress, and just one day just wipes everything out. And I'm like, damn, I got to start over now.
But it's weird because I guess it's a little hard. I'm not with you every day,
Hmm.
but I feel like we've spent a lot of time together, right? I feel like when I've always spoken to you, you've always listened with intent.
Hmm.
Truly, I've never felt like you're just like this. Like you listen with intent. I feel like that.
Yeah, so I listen to everyone, and I feel like I feel like it's a gift, right? I, I can memorize
Yeah.
like and remember like specific conversations, anything, especially when people tell me they want to accomplish stuff. I always remember it because I would always go back to it. So
What have I told you that I wanted to accomplish right now on the spot?
if I tell you, I feel like I'll have to edit this episode.
No, don't. It's okay. Don't. Let's just not. We'll keep moving.
Man, we have. I feel like there's a certain group of people like where we just have like it seems like simple conversations, but they're like just so deep, you know. And that's
Always.
why when I started this podcast, which I didn't even do the intro for,
Oh man, I don't even get an
I didn't get
intro.
in. I'm not gonna, and
It's
I'm
okay.
gonna post it like this. I'm not. That's the cool thing about having a podcast. Like I can do whatever I want on here,
You can.
and yeah, see, I can do whatever I want. So I don't have
I
an
love
intro.
it.
Um, I planned on being here for 30 minutes. We did 43, which I think is pretty good.
It
And you were
is.
saying how you were nervous to do it. I think you did a great job.
Thank you so much.
See,
Thanks for having
no
me.
problem. And I'm not.
I feel honored.
We might have to do it again. I think this
Yeah,
is
I would love to.
before I got on here. I feel like this is one of the episodes that I feel like people needed to see, especially for like younger people, because younger people. I mean, I feel like we lack maturity, and obviously, you know the way relationships work for a lot of us, right?
It's hard.
For a lot of
It's
us,
hard.
so I feel just having like an insight on y'all's relationship and life and experiences and stuff. I feel like there's a lot of valuable information from this conversation people can
Thank you.
use to
Thanks.
better themselves.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
But with that being said, would you like to give any last advice for couples?
I don't know. I just feel like I want to say that uh, nothing in life is easy. I truly believe that you have to work for it all. Relationships, friendships, keeping in contact with people, um, being married to somebody in this field. But if you continue to work for it and work through it and communicate, it'll always be worth it.
And I'm glad you said that. I'm not going to start a whole nother conversation, but I'm glad you said that because a
Yeah,
lot of times we think about working for goals, right? We think about like getting this job, going to school for this, but whenever we're in a relationship, we don't see it as working for it. We just like, all right, we accomplished it, now we just got to maintain it. But the fact that you
yeah,
said it's something you got to keep working for, I feel like that's an eye opener.
right,
So,
right.
with that being said, I really appreciated being on here.
Thank you. Me too.
So